Hey guys, tonight we begin with something that'll make you grateful for your GPS, your car's air conditioning, and the fact that you've never had to drink water with visible things swimming in it. We're diving into what life was really like on the Oregon Trail, that 2,170-mile death march disguised as an adventure that killed 1 out of every 10 people who attempted it. Forget the computer game where your biggest worry was hunting pixelated buffalo. The truth? You probably wouldn't last a single day. So before you get comfortable, maybe grab some clean water. You'll appreciate it more after this. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. The 4 a.m. wake-up call from hell. Congratulations, you've just been jolted awake at 4 a.m. by the wagon master's horn. A sound that makes your phone's alarm seem like a gentle lullaby. It's May 1843, somewhere near Independence, Missouri, and you're about to discover why sleeping in on the trail meant death. Your bed? A thin wool blanket thrown over the wooden wagon bed, which has all the comfort of sleeping on a xylophone made of pain. The wagon's canvas cover, that romantic white bonnet you've seen in paintings, is about as waterproof as a screen door. Last night's rain has seeped through, leaving you damp, cold, and already questioning every life decision that led you here. You sit up and immediately bang your head on a cast-iron pot hanging from the wagon bow. Stars dance in your vision, not the romantic kind you expected to see out west, but the concussion variety. Around you, your family stirs in a space smaller than a modern walk-in closet, packed with everything you own in the world. The smell hits you like a slap. Wet wool, unwashed bodies, and the distinctive aroma of the chamber pot that someone definitely didn't empty far enough from camp last night. Outside, you hear the camp coming alive. 50 other wagons, 200 people, 400 oxen, and approximately 1 million mosquitoes, all preparing for another day of what the guidebooks cheerfully called a pleasant journey to paradise. The guidebooks, you're beginning to suspect, were written by people who never left their desks in Boston, but you can't lay here feeling sorry for yourself. The wagon train waits for no one, literally. Fall behind and you're on your own in a landscape that views you as a walking lunch special. So you fumble in the dark for your boots, which are not only soaking wet, but have somehow become a luxury hotel for spiders overnight. Your first mistake? Thinking you could handle this because you'd been camping before. Your idea of camping involves s'mores and ghost stories. This is more like a mobile refugee camp, where the ghosts are real, and they're all people who thought they were tougher than dysentery. The oxen are lowing outside, their breath steaming in the cold morning air. These aren't the docile cows you're familiar with. These are 2,000-pound drama queens who will decide completely at random that today they're afraid of grass, or shadows, or their own feet. And you're about to spend the next 15 hours walking beside them while they pull your entire life at a blistering pace of 2 miles per hour. As you crawl out of the wagon, your joints crackling like a campfire, you notice something that will haunt you for the next 2,000 miles. Everyone else seems to know what they're doing. They're yoking oxen with practiced ease, starting fires without matches, and somehow looking functional despite having slept in conditions that would make a prison riot. You, on the other hand, can't even find your other sock. Welcome to day 23 of your 5-month journey. Only 157 more mornings like this to go, if you're lucky. Breakfast. When hardtack fights back. The sun isn't up yet, but breakfast prep has already begun, and oh boy, are you in for a treat. Forget your dreams of hearty pioneer meals around a crackling campfire. The reality of trail cooking makes airplane food look like fine dining. First, you need to start a fire. Sounds simple, right? Wrong. Trees disappeared about 50 miles back. Your fuel options are buffalo chips, a fancy pioneer term for dried dung, or sagebrush, both of which burn with all the enthusiasm of wet newspaper. You're literally cooking breakfast over burning poop. And somehow this isn't even in the top 5 worst things about your morning. Your wife, bless her exhausted heart, is trying to make coffee. Coffee is a generous term for what happens when you boil burnt breadcrumbs in creek water that's the color of chocolate milk. And not in a good way. The creek you're pulling from has been used as a bathroom by the 30 wagons ahead of you, not to mention the various wildlife who consider it their personal spa. You add extra coffee grounds to mask the taste of impending doom. Now for the main course. Hardtack. This isn't bread, it's a weapon masquerading as food. These rock-hard squares of flour and water were baked months ago and have the texture of ceramic tiles and about as much flavor. Soldiers called them tooth dullers and sheet iron crackers, and those were the affectionate nicknames. You have to soak them in water, the same delightful creek water, just to avoid dental catastrophe. Even then, biting into one is like chewing on history's angriest crouton. If you're feeling fancy, you might fry up some salt pork. Strips of fat so preserved in salt, they could probably survive nuclear winter. The salt content is so high that eating it makes you thirstier, which means drinking more of that delicious dysentery water. It's a vicious cycle that would be funny if it weren't slowly killing you. The children are crying because they want milk, but the cow you brought along stopped producing after the first week of terror walking. She's now just an extremely inefficient oxen who judges you with every step. The kids get water mixed with a little precious sugar instead, served in tin cups that somehow manage to be both scorching hot and freezing cold at the same time. You try to eat quickly because the wagon master is already yelling about making miles. There's no time to digest, no time to properly clean the dishes, just a quick rinse in that same multi-purpose creek, and definitely no time to question why you thought this was a good idea. A piece of hardtack falls on the ground. 5-second rule? Try 5-month rule. You pick it up, brush off the dirt, adding valuable minerals, you tell yourself, and choke it down. Your stomach makes a sound like a rusty gate, already protesting what you've asked it to process. Breakfast is over in 20 minutes. You've consumed approximately 400 calories of sadness and enough bacteria to start your own ecosystem. Your wife packs up the cooking supplies while you pretend your intestines aren't already planning their revenge. The oxen are yoked, the wagons are ready, and your hearty pioneer breakfast sits in your stomach like a threat. Time to walk. And walk. And walk. Only 20 miles to go today, which would be fine if you were in a car. But you're not. You're about to discover why pioneer women's journals often just had entries that said "still alive" and nothing else. The morning walk, your personal death march, begins. The wagon master shouts, "Wagons ho!" which sounds adventurous in movies, but in reality is the soundtrack to your impending foot destruction. Here's what Hollywood didn't tell you. Nobody rides in the wagons except the sick, injured, or dying. Those wagons are packed tighter than a can of sardines with your entire life's possessions. Add your body weight, and you've just murdered your oxen by noon. So you walk, and walk, and dear God, do you walk? Your boots, which seemed so sturdy back in Independence, are already showing signs of defeat. The leather is cracking, the soles are wearing thin, and you're only 500 miles into a 2,170-mile journey. By Wyoming, you'll be wrapping your feet in strips of canvas and praying to any deity who'll listen. Some pioneers ended up barefoot, their feet so calloused they looked like leather themselves. The lucky ones. The trail is not a road. Let's be very clear about this. It's a suggestion of where previous wagons have gone, marked mainly by the graves of people who thought they were tougher than cholera. In some places, it's a foot deep in fine dust that infiltrates everything. Your lungs, your food, your will to live. This dust isn't just dirt. It's a fine powder made from dried grass, pulverized rock, and the dreams of everyone who came before you. Within the first hour, you're coated in a layer of this dust so thick you look like a ghost of your former self. It's in your eyes, making them water constantly. It's in your nose, forming what pioneers called trail concrete when mixed with your natural moisture. You'll be picking prehistoric boogers until Christmas. Your job is to walk beside the oxen, keeping them moving with a combination of shouts, prayers, and a willow switch that the oxen ignore with professional indifference. These beasts plod along at roughly 2 miles per hour, which means you're walking at 2 miles per hour. For context, that's slower than a casual stroll through a mall, except the mall is 2,000 miles long and actively trying to kill you. The children have stopped complaining about walking because they've entered a state of resigned suffering that would make Buddhist monks proud. Your 5-year-old daughter has already worn through her first pair of shoes. Your 8-year-old son is developing blisters that have blisters. The baby, mercifully, rides in the wagon, screaming with a dedication that suggests future career options in opera or torture. By 10 a.m., the sun is turning the prairie into an oven. There's no shade for miles, just grass, sky, and the growing certainty that you've made a terrible mistake. The bonnets the women wear aren't fashion statements. They're survival equipment. Without them, the sun would fry your brain like an egg. The men's hats are already soaked with sweat, creating a delightful sweatband of bacteria that will ensure any head wound becomes immediately infected. You've been walking for 6 hours. You've covered maybe 10 miles. Only 10 more to go today. Your feet are screaming, your back aches from the weird walking posture required to avoid wagon wheels, and you're pretty sure that's blood in your shoe. But you can't stop. The wagon train doesn't stop. It's a relentless, rolling death march that pauses only for catastrophe. Water break? You get a few swigs from a barrel that's been sloshing around in the heat, developing new forms of life. The water tastes like wood, metal, and regret. You drink it anyway because the alternative is death, and you're not quite there yet. Though as you watch the endless grassland stretch before you, shimmering in the heat like nature's own torture chamber, you wonder if death might at least involve less walking. High noon hell, when the prairie becomes your enemy, the sun reaches its zenith and the temperature hits 95 degrees Fahrenheit. There's no air conditioning, no shade, no escape. The prairie has become a convection oven, and you're the unfortunate meat being slow roasted to perfection. Your clothes, which started the day merely damp with morning dew and sweat, are now so saturated they weigh twice their normal weight. This is when people start dropping. Not dramatically, not all at once, but with a quiet desperation that's somehow worse. Henderson from Wagon 12 hasn't been seen walking for the past hour. She's in her wagon now, feeling poorly, which is pioneer speak for probably dying but too polite to mention it. Heat exhaustion doesn't announce itself with fanfare. It creeps up like a thief, stealing your energy, your coordination, and eventually your consciousness. The children have gone quiet, which is more terrifying than their crying. Quiet children on the trail usually means they're either sick or plotting something. Your daughter is dragging her feet, creating little dust clouds with each step. Her lips are cracked despite the precious butter you've been using as lip balm. Your son keeps asking for water, but you have to ration it. The next reliable water source is 15 miles away, and at this pace, that's tomorrow's problem. The oxen are suffering too. These beasts can pull tremendous weight, but they're not machines. They need water. Lots of it. About 30 gallons per ox per day in this heat. You have maybe half that if you're lucky. Their tongues loll out, dripping with foam that immediately evaporates in the heat. One of them stumbles, and your heart stops. If an ox goes down, you don't just lose transportation, you lose everything that wagon carries. Other families might help, but they're all on the edge of survival too. Pioneer generosity has limits, and those limits are usually defined by their own children's hunger. Lunch is a joke that nobody's laughing at. You gnaw on more hardtack, now with extra dust flavoring, and maybe some dried fruit if you're wealthy enough to have brought some. The dried apples taste like leather that's been stored in a shoe, but they're fruit, technically, and might prevent scurvy. Might. You eat while walking because stopping means falling behind, and falling behind means camping alone tonight, and camping alone means becoming a statistic in someone else's journal. Passed the Johnson's wagon today. Wolves got them. Took their bacon, though. Waste not, want not. The afternoon stretch is when the mirages start. The heat rising from the ground creates phantom lakes that shimmer and dance just out of reach. Your brain, cooked by the sun and dehydrated beyond reason, starts playing tricks. That rock looks like a house. That bush is surely a well. That definitely isn't a human skeleton propped against a wagon wheel with a sign that says, "Turn back." Except it definitely is. And the sign is written in what you hope is rust, but no, probably isn't. Your leather boots have become instruments of torture. The sweat pooling in them has created a perfect environment for what future generations will call trench foot. But you just know, as my feet are rotting off. Every step squishes, and not in a fun, puddle-jumping way. More in a, I'm walking in my own decay way. The wagon ruts you're following are sometimes so deep that walking in them is like navigating a very long, very boring maze. Step out of them, and you're in grass that could be hiding anything. Rattlesnakes, holes, the decomposing dreams of previous travelers. Step in them, and you're walking in the compressed suffering of everyone who came before. By 3 p.m., you've entered the zombie hours. You're walking, but you're not really conscious. Your body has automated the process. Left foot, right foot, swat fly, check child, avoid wheel, repeat. Your mind has gone somewhere else, probably back to Missouri, sitting on a porch that didn't move, drinking water that didn't taste like death, wondering what kind of madness possessed you to think this was a good idea. But you keep walking, because the alternative is stopping, and stopping means dying. And you're not ready to die. Not yet. Not on day 23. Not when you've already invested so much suffering into this journey. Though as another hour passes and the sun continues its relentless assault, you start to wonder if maybe the people who died early were the smart ones. At least they don't have to walk anymore. River crossing. Today's game of liquid Russian roulette. Around 4 p.m., salvation appears on the horizon, or what passes for salvation on the trail. A river. From a distance, it looks peaceful, even inviting. A ribbon of water cutting through the endless grass, promising cool relief from the heat. You've never been more wrong about anything in your life. As you get closer, the reality sets in. This isn't a river. It's a 100-yard-wide conspiracy between nature and death. The water is the color of café au lait, if café au lait was made with dirt instead of milk, and actively trying to kill you. The current is deceptively fast, carrying logs, dead animals, and the occasional wagon wheel from someone who learned the hard way that rivers don't play favorites. The wagon master calls a halt to discuss the crossing, which is pioneer speak for figure out how many of us are going to die trying to get to the other side. There are no bridges out here, no ferries, just you, your wagon, and a river that's claimed more lives than smallpox and Indian attacks combined. Option 1, float the wagons. This involves caulking every crack in your wagon bed with tar and fabric, turning it into the world's worst boat. You've seen others try this. About half make it. The other half provide an exciting show as their worldly possessions float downstream while they stand on the bank watching their new life literally drift away. One family lost their grandmother this way last week, not to drowning. She was in the wagon when it tipped. They found her 2 miles downstream, still clutching her knitting. Option 2, ford the river. This means keeping the wagons on their wheels and just driving through. Simple, right? Except the riverbed is a minefield of holes, rocks, and mud that can swallow a wheel faster than you can say westward expansion. The oxen, already exhausted and dehydrated, now have to pull twice their weight through moving water while you walk beside them, praying to every deity you can name that today isn't the day they decide to panic. Your family votes to ford because floating seems like tempting fate, and fate has already shown a pretty sick sense of humor. You spend the next hour preparing, which mostly involves moving everything you own to the highest parts of the wagon and trying not to think about how none of it matters if the wagon flips. The women hike up their skirts and tie them in knots that would make sailors proud. Modesty died somewhere back in Kansas. The children are placed in the wagon despite the danger, because the alternative is having them swept away by the current. Your wife gives you a look that says, "If you die doing this, I will resurrect you just to kill you again." You enter the water and immediately realize you've made a terrible mistake. The current is stronger than it looked, the water colder, the bottom more treacherous. Within seconds, you're waist deep and the oxen are starting to panic. Their eyes roll white and they're making sounds you didn't know oxen could make. Sort of a bellowing scream that perfectly captures how you feel inside. Halfway across, the inevitable happens. The wagon lurches as a wheel catches on something, a rock, a hole, a submerged wagon from someone else's failed crossing. Everything tilts at a sickening angle. Your daughter screams. Your wife grabs for the baby. You're pushing against the wagon with every ounce of strength you have left, trying to keep it upright while the river tries to claim another victim. Water pours over the sideboard. Your flour is ruined. Your sugar is gone. The salt pork is now just pork-flavored river water. But somehow, miraculously, the wagon rights itself. The oxen, driven by the same survival instinct that got humans this far, lunge forward. Step by agonizing step, you make it to the far bank. You collapse in the mud, gasping, shaking, alive. Your family tumbles out of the wagon, soaked but breathing. You've made it. This time, you inventory the damage. Half your food supplies are destroyed, your extra clothes are soaked, and will mildew before they dry in this humidity. And everyone is shivering despite the heat. But there's no time to celebrate or mourn. 30 more wagons need to cross before dark. You watch as the next family enters the water, holding your breath as they reach the midpoint. Mrs. Patterson's wagon makes it. The Young's wagon makes it. Then the screaming starts from the Anderson wagon as it tips, spilling everything and everyone into the muddy current. You join the human chain trying to rescue what can be rescued. Bodies first, then possessions, then dignity, in that order. Little Sarah Anderson is pulled out, blue-lipped, but breathing. Her brother isn't so lucky. They find him an hour later, 200 yards downstream, his head split open on a rock, another grave to dig, another marker to leave behind, another family destroyed by water that looked so innocent from a distance. And you still have at least a dozen major river crossings ahead. Each one a new opportunity for the trail to collect its toll in human lives. As the sun sets and camp is made on the far bank, you sit in your wet clothes, eating cold hardtack because nobody has dry wood for fires. The river runs behind you, peaceful now, carrying away the blood and tears of another crossing. Tomorrow you'll face the prairie again, but tonight you're just grateful to be on the right side of the water. Even if everything you own smells like wet death and your chances of survival just dropped another 10%. Evening camp, where hope goes to die. By 6 p.m., the wagon master finally calls a halt. You've made maybe 15 miles today, 5 short of the goal, but the river crossing 8 times like hardtack eats teeth. Everyone spreads out in what pioneers generously called making camp. But what's really just collapsing where you stop? The first priority is the animals. Not because anyone's particularly fond of them at this point, but because without them, you're just dying pedestrians with too much luggage. The oxen need to be unyoked, watered from the same muddy river that just tried to kill you, and put out to graze on grass that gets sparser and sadder with each passing mile. You examine their hooves for splits and stones, their yokes for sores. That festering wound on Bessie's shoulder is getting worse. The flies love it. You pack it with axle grease and hope for the best, knowing full well that the best probably means she drops dead in Nebraska and you spend winter eating stringy ox meat. While you tend the animals, your wife performs miracles with wet supplies and no fire. The children need feeding, but half your food is now river-flavored mush. She salvages what she can, wringing out flour sacks and trying to separate the weevils from the meal. The weevils are winning. The baby needs changing, but all the spare clothes are soaked. She uses a piece of canvas that's only slightly disgusting. Pioneer motherhood is 10% love and 90% pretending things aren't as bad as they obviously are. Getting a fire started is tonight's special challenge. Everything is wet from the crossing. The buffalo chips are soggy, the sagebrush is damp, and your matches, what few you have, are more precious than gold. You huddle with other men, everyone contributing their driest materials, performing what looks like a satanic ritual, but is really just desperate people trying to make flame from prayer and friction. When fire finally catches, it's cause for celebration. A sad, exhausted celebration where everyone's too tired to actually celebrate. The smoke is thick and acrid, making everyone cough, but smoke means warmth and cooked food, so you'll take respiratory damage over hypothermia. Dinner is whatever survived the river plus whatever creativity your wife can muster. Tonight's menu: water soup. It's hot water with some salt pork fat floating in it, a few soggy beans that might be edible, and enough salt to make you forget you're essentially drinking flavored river water. The children eat it without complaint, which tells you how exhausted they are. Usually they'd rather starve than eat trail food without a fight. After dinner comes the nightly ritual of checking for injuries, illness, and impending death. Your feet look like they've been through a meat grinder, then soaked in bacteria soup. Your daughter's blisters have burst and are weeping clear fluid. Your son has developed a cough that sounds wet. Your wife doesn't mention the blood she's been passing, but you've seen her wince. Everyone's got dysentery to some degree. It's not a question of if, but how bad. The Anderson family is still dealing with their loss. Mrs. Anderson hasn't spoken since they pulled her boy from the river. Mr. Anderson is digging the grave with the help of other men, the sound of shovels on earth providing tonight's funeral soundtrack. Another small wooden cross to add the trail's collection. Another mother who'll never be the same. As darkness falls, the real fun begins. Wolves howl in the distance, or maybe not so distant. Sounds carry weird on the prairie. What seems like miles away might be just beyond the firelight. Everyone checks their weapons such as they are. A few rifles, some pistols, and a lot of false confidence. The livestock get nervous, and nervous livestock means stampede potential. Someone has to stay up on watch, which tonight means you because you lost the draw. You wrap yourself in a still damp blanket that smells like mildew and broken dreams. Prop yourself against a wagon wheel and prepare for 4 hours of trying not to fall asleep while also trying not to think about all the ways you could die before morning. Snake bite, wolf attack, Indian raid, cholera, dysentery, infected wound, starvation exposure, wagon accident, river crossing. The list is so long it's almost comical. Except it's not funny when it's your reality. The stars come out, brilliant and numerous in a way that would be beautiful if you weren't so tired, so sick, so scared. Back home, you used to think stars were romantic. Now they're just another reminder of how far you are from anything resembling civilization. Each twinkle might as well be spelling out, you made a terrible mistake in cosmic Morse code. Around you, the camp settles into uneasy sleep. Snores mix with coughs, whimpers, and the occasional scream from someone having trail nightmares. The fire burns low, casting dancing shadows that look like all your fears made visible. You add another buffalo chip to the flames and try not to think about tomorrow. Because tomorrow means walking again. Tomorrow means another river. Tomorrow means watching the horizon for clouds that could bring rain, hail, tornadoes, or all three. Tomorrow means checking if anyone died in the night. But mostly tomorrow means you're still on the trail. Still moving west. Still pretending this is an adventure and not a slow-motion catastrophe. Only 1,670 miles to go. The night terrors. When darkness brings death. Midnight on the trail isn't peaceful. It's when the prairie shows its teeth. You're on watch, fighting to keep your eyes open. When you hear it, a sound that makes your blood freeze. It's not wolves. It's worse. It's the sound of your 5-year-old daughter struggling to breathe. You rush to the wagon, trying not to wake the entire camp, but knowing silence might cost precious seconds. In the flickering firelight, you see her face flushed with fever, her tiny chest heaving with effort. The cough that started this afternoon has transformed into something monstrous. Each breath sounds like she's drowning on dry land. Your wife is already awake, that mother's instinct that knows when death comes calling. Her eyes meet yours, and you both know what this means. There's no doctor for 500 miles, no medicine beyond what you carry, no hospital. Just you, prayer, and whatever pioneer medicine you can cobble together from ignorance and desperation. The medical supplies you have are laughable. Laudanum, basically opium, calomel, mercury that causes violent purging, and various patent medicines that are mostly alcohol with creative names. You have whiskey for antiseptic, assuming you haven't drunk it all, to forget you're on this death march. There's a book, The Pioneer's Guide to Health, but it might as well be titled Creative Ways to Die While Pretending to Help. Your wife boils water, not because it'll help, but because action feels better than helplessness. She makes a tent with a blanket and holds your daughter over the steam, hoping to ease the breathing. You dig through the medicine chest, looking for anything that might help, knowing that half these remedies are more likely to kill than cure. Other families are waking now. Trail sickness spreads like wildfire and everyone knows it. Mrs. Patterson brings over some willow bark tea. It might reduce fever, or it might do nothing, but it's something. Mr. Young offers his last bit of honey to coat her throat. These people barely have enough to keep their own children alive, but they share anyway because tomorrow it might be their child gasping for air. The night drags on in a blur of steam, tears, and labored breathing. You take turns holding her, whispering promises you can't keep about California and orange trees and a house that doesn't have wheels. Her fever spikes, and you use precious water to cool her down, knowing you'll pay for it tomorrow when the sun turns the prairie into hell again. Around 3 a.m., something shifts. The breathing eases slightly. The fever breaks, leaving her drenched but alive. Alive. The most beautiful word in the English language when you're 1,000 miles from nowhere watching your child fight death. But relief is temporary on the trail. As dawn approaches, you hear wailing from the Henderson wagon. Their grandmother didn't make it through the night. Heart gave out, or maybe she just decided she'd walked far enough. You'll help dig another grave after breakfast, say another prayer. Leave another marker that will be weathered away before anyone reads it. The camp sturges to life with the particular exhaustion of people who've spent the night fighting various demons. Your daughter is breathing, but weak. She'll ride in the wagon today, adding weight the oxen can't spare. But what choice do you have? Leave her behind? The thought flickers through your mind, a horrible practical trail thought that makes you hate yourself. But you'd die before you'd leave her. You'd carry her to California on your back if necessary. Your wife hasn't slept. Her eyes are red-rimmed. her hands shaking as she tries to prepare breakfast from supplies that are dwindling faster than the miles. The coffee is weaker today, the hardtack harder, the salt pork more rancid. But you eat because calories are calories and you need energy for another day of walking toward a promise that seems more like a lie with each passing mile. The Anderson boys' grave is finished just as the sun breaks the horizon. Rev. Mills says a few words, the same words he said yesterday and the day before and will say tomorrow. The Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away, dust to dust. May his soul find the rest that eluded his body. The words are wearing thin from overuse. Your daughter calls weakly from the wagon. She wants water. You give her the last of the clean water from your personal supply, knowing you'll be drinking river mud by noon. But she's alive. She's alive, and that's all that matters. The wagon master calls the familiar wagons ho, and another day begins. Your feet have forgotten what it feels like not to hurt. Your stomach has accepted its new diet of despair. Your dreams of California gold have been replaced by simpler dreams. A day without death, a meal without dirt, a drink of water that doesn't taste like graves. But you walk, because your daughter is breathing in the wagon, because your wife is counting on you. Because you've come too far to quit now, even though quitting seems like the sanest option available. The sun climbs higher, the temperature rises, and the trail stretches endlessly ahead. Another day on the Oregon Trail. Another day of discovering just how much misery the human body can endure and keep moving. You wouldn't last a day, they said. Well, you've lasted 23. Only 157 more to go. If the fever doesn't take you, if the rivers don't claim you, if the food holds out, if the oxen survive, if the Indians stay peaceful, if the weather cooperates, if your body doesn't finally revolt, if your mind doesn't break from the relentless, grinding horror of it all. That's a lot of ifs between here and Oregon. But your daughter is breathing, ragged and weak, but breathing. And so you walk, one bloody footstep at a time, into another day of the American dream turned nightmare. The trail doesn't care about your dreams. It only cares about the price. And the price is everything you have, paid in daily installments of suffering. Welcome to day 24, where your morning routine now includes checking if everyone's still alive before checking if there's coffee. Spoiler alert, someone's usually not, and there's never really coffee. Just burnt grain water that tastes like disappointment with hints of dysentery. Your daughter is breathing better, but she's still too weak to walk. She rides in the wagon, adding precious weight to your already struggling oxen. You've done the math. Every pound in that wagon means more strain on the animals, more chance they'll collapse before California. But what's the alternative? Make her walk? You'd carry her yourself before that happened, even though your own body is held together by pure stubbornness and trail dust. The landscape has changed. Gone are the gentle rolling hills of Missouri. You're in Kansas now, where the prairie stretches endlessly in every direction like God's own practical joke about monotony. The grass is tall enough to hide a man, which sounds poetic until you realize it could be hiding literally anything. Snakes, holes, the decomposing dreams of pioneers who gave up right here. By mid-morning, the temperature is climbing toward 90 degrees again. The sun has a personal vendetta against human skin. Everyone's burned, peeling, and burned again in layers like the world's worst lasagna. The women's bonnets provide some protection, but the men's faces look like leather that's been left in the sun too long. You're all turning into human jerky, preserved by sweat and suffering. Water is becoming a problem. Not just any problem. The kind of problem that kills people. The last creek was 3 days ago, and it was more mud than water. The barrels are getting low, and what's left tastes like it's been filtered through a graveyard. Which, considering how many people have died along this trail, might not be far from the truth. The wagon train pushes toward the next water source marked on your map, Elm Creek, according to the guidebook that's been wrong about everything else. The book promised clear, refreshing water. What you find is a trickle of brown sludge that smells like rotting eggs mixed with despair. But you're so thirsty, you drink it anyway, straining it through cloth that's dirtier than the water itself. This is when people start making the mistakes that kill them. Drinking bad water because the alternative is dying of thirst. It's Russian roulette with every sip. Will this be the drink that gives you cholera, dysentery, or just regular poisoning? You won't know for hours or days, which is the worst part. Every stomach cramp becomes a potential death sentence. Your wife hasn't complained once, but you see her wince when she walks. She's been passing blood for days now, a common trail ailment that could mean anything from hemorrhoids to internal bleeding. The medical knowledge of the group extends to put a poultice on it and pray harder. Neither seems particularly effective against the realities of 19th century internal medicine. Day 31, the Buffalo Kingdom. You smell them before you see them. Buffalo, thousands of them, maybe tens of thousands, moving across the prairie like a brown sea. The entire wagon train stops, partly in awe, mostly in desperate hope. Fresh meat, actual, real, not salted to death meat. The men grab their rifles with the excitement of children on Christmas morning. Finally, a chance to be providers instead of just walking skeletons shepherding dying oxen. The wagon master organizes a hunting party, which is generous terminology for guys with guns who've mostly only shot at stationary targets. Here's what the romantic Western novels don't tell you about buffalo hunting. These animals weigh up to 2,000 pounds and can run 35 miles per hour. Your rifles are single-shot muzzle loaders that take 30 seconds to reload if you're fast, which you're not because your hands are shaking from malnutrition. The buffalo, meanwhile, have evolved for millions of years to not die. The first volley of shots mostly just makes the herd angry. One buffalo goes down, an old bull who was probably planning to die anyway. The rest stampede, and suddenly the prairie is shaking like an earthquake made of meat and hooves. The sound is incredible, thousands of hooves hitting earth, creating a rolling thunder that you feel in your chest. The successful hunters, all three of them, are heroes for the day. But now comes the real work, butchering a buffalo on the prairie with basic knives and no refrigeration. It's like trying to disassemble a fur-covered car using only spite and determination. The meat has to be cut into strips and dried immediately, or it'll rot before you can eat it. Everyone gets involved. Women who've never handled raw meat bigger than a chicken are suddenly elbow-deep in buffalo, cutting and stripping with the efficiency of people who know this might be their last real meal for weeks. Children help by keeping flies away, a losing battle that's more gesture than effectiveness. The smell is overwhelming, blood, organs, and the distinctive musk of buffalo that permeates everything. Your clothes will smell like buffalo for weeks, your hair, your skin, your dreams. But you don't care because tonight, for the first time in weeks, you'll eat until you're actually full. Except you can't eat too much. Trail wisdom says gorging on fresh meat after weeks of hardtack and salt pork will turn your intestines into a war zone. So you practice the twisted self-control of eating just enough to stop the hunger pains, saving the rest as jerky that will taste like leather but might keep you alive. The parts you can't eat, and there are many, are left for the wolves and vultures that follow the wagon train like a cleanup crew. Nothing goes to waste on the prairie. What you don't use, something else will. It's the circle of life, if the circle was drawn by someone having a nervous breakdown. Day 45. Independence Rock and the Art of Grave Digging. You've been seeing it for 2 days. Independence Rock, rising from the prairie like a granite whale breaching a grass ocean. It's supposed to be a celebration point. If you reach it by July 4th, you're on schedule. You arrive on July 15th. Nobody mentions the date. The rock is covered in names carved by thousands of pioneers who passed before. It's like a giant guest book for the doomed. The Johnson family, 1842. You wonder if they made it. Mary Loves William, 1841. You wonder if Mary and William are still alive, still together, or buried somewhere between here and Oregon. Your son wants to carve your family name. It seems important to him, this idea of leaving a mark. You help him scratch the letters into the granite. The Your Name Family, 1843. It takes an hour with a rusty knife, but when it's done, you've achieved immortality of sorts. Someday someone will see this and wonder about you. Hopefully, they'll assume you made it. The real monument to the trail isn't Independence Rock, though. It's the graves. They line the trail like mile markers, except instead of measuring distance, they measure human cost. You've become an expert grave digger. You know exactly how deep to go. 3 feet if you have time, 2 if you don't, less if the wolves are already circling. You know how to pile rocks to discourage scavengers. You know the prayers by heart because you've said them so many times. Today, it's the widow Patterson. The fever took her in the night. Her children, aged 8 and 10, watch as you lower their mother into Wyoming soil. They don't cry. Trail children learn early that tears are a luxury you can't afford when you need that water for drinking. The worst part about trail graves is leaving them. You pile the rocks, say the words, and then you just go. No visiting on anniversaries, no flowers on birthdays, just a pile of rocks in the middle of nowhere, soon to be scattered by weather and animals. The trail is littered with these monuments to almost made it. Sometimes you pass graves that have been disturbed, animals, usually. Sometimes Indians looking for burial goods. Sometimes desperate pioneers looking for anything useful. It's grave robbing, but moral flexibility increases with desperation. You'd be shocked if you still had the energy for shock. Your wife suggests saying a prayer at each grave you pass. You start to, but there are so many. If you stopped at each one, you'd never make any distance. So you develop a rolling prayer, a constant murmur as you walk past the democracy of death. Rich, poor, young, old, the trail doesn't discriminate. It takes whoever it wants, whenever it wants. Day 58. The Sweetwater River. That isn't sweet. The Sweetwater River is a lie. It's not sweet. It's alkaline water that tastes like licking a salt lick that's been used as a urinal. But it's water. And after days of rationing, you'll drink anything that's liquid and not immediately fatal. The problem with alkaline water, besides the taste that makes you question God's plan, is what it does to your insides. Within hours of drinking, the cramps start. Not gentle, I ate too much cramps. These are, my intestines are trying to escape through my belly button cramps. The entire wagon train becomes a mobile bathroom situation, with people constantly darting into the sagebrush for privacy that doesn't exist. The children adapt with the horrifying resilience of the young. They learn to recognize the bathroom face and get out of the way. They learn that when someone suddenly stops walking and gets very still, you don't ask questions. You just look away and pretend you don't hear the sounds of human suffering. The oxen suffer too. Their eyes become dull, their steps sluggish. One of yours, Bessie, the one with the festering shoulder wound, simply stops. No drama, no collapse. She just stops walking and refuses to start again. You unyoke her, and she stands there, head down, waiting to die. You should butcher her for meat. But she's so diseased, so worn down, that eating her might kill you faster than starving. So you leave her standing there, a living monument to the price of progress. By the time you make camp that night, the wolves will have solved the problem. You'll hear them fighting over her carcass and feel guilty relief that at least something benefited from her death. The Sweetwater Valley is beautiful, objectively. Mountains in the distance, wide open spaces, dramatic skies. It looks like a painting if the painting was titled, "Beautiful Place to Die Horribly." You're too exhausted to appreciate the scenery. Beauty is for people who aren't calculating whether they have enough food to make it to Fort Bridger. Day 72. The Great Mormon Handcart Disaster Preview. You encounter them near Devil's Gate, a group of Mormon pioneers pulling handcarts instead of wagons. No oxen, no horses, just human determination dragging their possessions across the continent. You thought you had it bad. These people are pulling their own weight, literally. They're cheerful, which is disturbing, singing hymns while their feet bleed through wrapped rags. Their children ride in the carts while adults pull, switching positions every few hours in a relay race against starvation. They share what little food they have with you, which makes you feel guilty about complaining about your oxen-pulled wagon. One of their leaders, a Brother Jensen, explains their plan to reach Salt Lake City before winter. You don't tell him what you're thinking, that they're all gonna die. The Martin and Willie handcart companies won't happen for another 13 years, but the seeds of that disaster are visible here. Winter comes early in Wyoming. These people are moving too slowly. The math doesn't work. But they have faith, which is apparently more filling than food. They pray over every meal of gruel. They thank God for the privilege of suffering. It's either inspiring or insane, and you're too tired to decide which. Your daughter plays with their children while the adults talk. Kids don't care about religious differences when there are games to play. They're playing Pioneer House, which involves pretending to die of various diseases. It would be morbid if it weren't so accurate. One child pretends to have cholera. Another has a broken leg. They take turns being dead and being the parent who has to keep going. When you part ways the next morning, you feel like you've glimpsed your own future from a slightly worse angle. At least you have oxen, even if they're dying. At least you have wagons, even if they're falling apart. The handcart pioneers disappear into the distance, still singing, still pulling, still believing. You'll think about them when winter comes early. You'll wonder if they made it. Historically, this group probably did. The real disasters come later. But the pattern is already set: faith versus physics, and physics usually wins. Day 85, South Pass, the drunk man's geography lesson. South Pass is supposed to be the easy way through the Rocky Mountains, easy being a relative term that apparently means won't definitely kill you like the other passes will. It's a broad, gradual slope that drunk mapmakers decided was the Continental Divide. You've crossed from Atlantic to Pacific drainage without fanfare, without even really noticing. This should feel momentous. You're on the western side of the continent now. Water flows toward the Pacific. You've achieved something. But mostly you feel tired and notice that the mosquitoes are just as bad on this side of the divide. The real celebration at South Pass isn't geographical, it's psychological. You're over halfway there, theoretically, if you don't die, which is still a significant if. The wagon train pauses for a few hours to let this sink in. Men shake hands. Women cry from relief, exhaustion, or the realization that halfway still means another 1,000 miles of this. Someone breaks out a hidden bottle of whiskey. It gets passed around, everyone taking a small sip. It burns going down, reminding you that your throat is raw from months of trail dust. The whiskey is gone in minutes, but the warmth lasts a bit longer. Dutch courage for the back half of this insane journey. Your son finds a stick and plants it at the highest point he can reach, declaring he's claimed South Pass for America. You don't tell him America already claimed it. Let him have this moment of feeling like an explorer, instead of a refugee from common sense. The descent from South Pass is gentle but endless. You can see for 50 miles in every direction, which means you can see exactly how much nothing lies ahead. Desert, actual desert. You thought the prairie was bad, but at least it had grass. This is just dirt, pretending to be land. Water becomes more precious than gold. The streams are few and far between, and half of them are poisoned with alkali. You can tell the bad water by the white crust around the edges and the dead animals nearby. Nothing says, "Don't drink this," quite like a bloated ox carcass, but desperation makes people stupid. Day 96, Fort Bridger, the trading post of broken dreams. Fort Bridger isn't a fort. It's 2 rough cabins and a corral run by Jim Bridger, a mountain man who's figured out that fleecing desperate pioneers is more profitable than trapping beaver. His prices are criminal. $20 for a barrel of flour that costs $2 in Missouri. But you pay because the alternative is eating sagebrush and hoping for the best. Bridger himself is a character. Dressed in buckskins that haven't seen soap since the Jurassic period, speaking in a mixture of English, French, and languages you don't recognize. He claims to have discovered the Great Salt Lake, married 3 Native American women. Sequentially, he clarifies, as if that makes it more respectable, and fought a grizzly bear with nothing but a knife and bad attitude. Half his stories are obviously lies, but they're entertaining lies. After months of trail monotony, even tall tales are welcome. He tells your children about glass mountains and boiling rivers, about valleys where grass grows tall as trees. They listen with wide eyes, believing every word because why not? They've seen enough impossible things already. The store at Fort Bridger is a cruel joke. Prices aside, the selection is pitiful. Flour, bacon, coffee, sugar, all at prices that would make a loan shark blush. But you need supplies, and this is the last chance before the final push. You trade away more of your dwindling possessions, your wife's good cooking pot for flour, your spare boots for bacon, your dignity for coffee. Bridger offers advice with every purchase, most of it contradictory. Take the Hastings cutoff, it'll save you 400 miles. It won't. Don't take the Hastings cutoff, it's a death trap. It is. The Salt Desert is only 40 miles across. It's 80. You can make it in 2 days. You can't. You stick with the known trail because at this point, known death seems preferable to unknown death. The devil you know has at least been mapped by previous survivors. Day 112. The Humboldt River, nature's longest cruel joke. The Humboldt River is 350 miles of lies. It starts promisingly enough, actual water, flowing in the right direction. Trees, grass, but as you follow it west, it gradually reveals its true nature, a slowly dying water source that gets worse with every mile. The water turns increasingly alkaline. The grass becomes sparse, then poisonous. The trees disappear. By the time you're 200 miles in, you're following a trickle of poison through a landscape that makes hell look hospitable. But you follow it because it's the only water source. It's like being in an abusive relationship with geography. The dust along the Humboldt is legendary. Fine as flour, it rises in clouds with every step. It coats everything: food, water, lungs. You're eating dust, breathing dust, becoming dust. Your daughter develops a cough that sounds like sandpaper on wood. Everyone's eyes are red and weeping constantly, not from emotion, but from irritation. The oxen are dying faster now. You're down to 2, and one of those is held together by hope and harness leather. When an ox dies, the vultures don't even wait for you to move on. They land while you're still unyoking the corpse, patient as tax collectors. The human casualties mount too. Heat stroke takes Mr. Henderson at midday. His wife doesn't even cry, she's out of tears, out of water to make them. Baby Miller dies of what they call summer complaint, which is a pleasant way of saying dehydrated to death. These aren't dramatic deaths. People just stop, fall, and don't get up. Your wagon is falling apart. Wheels crack in the dry heat, axles split, the wood shrinks, opening gaps that let in dust and despair. Every repair is temporary, using materials from other broken wagons. It's cannibalism, but for vehicles. At night, the temperature drops 40 degrees. You go from heat stroke to hypothermia without passing through comfortable. The stars are brilliant in the clear desert air, mocking you with their beauty while you shiver in inadequate blankets. Day 128. The Humboldt Sink, where hope goes to die. The Humboldt Sink is where the Humboldt River gives up. It just ends, spreads out into a marshy, alkaline wasteland, and evaporates. Like your dreams of easy passage to California. The metaphor is so obvious it's insulting. This is where you prepare for the 40-mile desert. 40 miles with no water. In September. In Nevada. The wagon master calls a meeting to discuss strategy, which is like discussing strategy for Russian roulette. There's no good way to do this. There's only probably die and definitely die. You spend a day preparing, cutting grass, what little exists, for the oxen, filling every container with water, even though the Humboldt water is barely better than poison. Your wife boils it, lets the sediment settle, boils it again. It still tastes like death, but warm death. Everything non-essential gets dumped. The rocking chair you've carried 1,500 miles? Gone. The books? Gone. Family heirlooms? Left in a pile with dozens of others, a museum of abandoned sentiment. You keep food, water, and the clothes on your back. Everything else is weight that will kill your oxen. Other families are making the same calculations. The desert crossing is littered with possessions, furniture, tools, trunks of clothes. Future travelers will call it shopping when they scavenge from the dead and desperate. Circle of life, Oregon Trail style. You'll travel at night to avoid the heat. In theory. In practice, traveling at night means stumbling through darkness, following wagon ruts you can barely see, praying you don't wander off the trail into the infinite desert. The moon helps when it's up. When it's not, you navigate by pure faith and the smell of dead oxen marking the way. The last night at the sink, nobody sleeps well. You're about to attempt something that kills 1 in 10 who try it. Those odds seemed better back in Missouri. Now, standing at the edge of the desert, they seem insane. But going back is impossible. The only way out is through. Your daughter asks if you'll make it to California. You lie and say yes. She knows you're lying. Trail children develop a sixth sense for parental BS. But she pretends to believe you because what else can she do? She's 9 years old and about to walk across hell because her parents thought farming in California sounded nice. Day 130, the 40-mile desert, a masterclass in suffering. You start at sunset, hoping to get as far as possible before the sun turns the desert into a furnace. The first few hours aren't terrible. It's almost pleasant, walking in the cool evening air. Then the moon sets, and you're navigating by starlight and the phosphorescent glow of alkali dust kicked up by wagon wheels. By midnight, the oxen are struggling. They smell the death on the trail, the hundreds of animals that have died here before them. They become skittish, harder to control. One tries to turn back. You beat it forward with a stick, hating yourself but having no choice. Kindness is a luxury you can't afford in the desert. Dawn brings the heat. It starts gentle, almost welcome after the cold night. Then it builds and builds. By 10 a.m., the desert is a furnace. The sand reflects heat from below while the sun pounds from above. You're being cooked from both directions. Water disappears faster than you calculated. What seemed like plenty at the sink now looks dangerously low. You ration more strictly. A sip every hour. The children cry for water, and you have to say no. It's a special kind of hell, denying water to your thirsty child while your own throat burns. The trail is marked by death, dead oxen every 100 yards, abandoned wagons, sometimes dead people, half buried by blown sand. You don't stop to bury them properly. You don't have the water to spare for the effort. The living take precedence over the dead. Your last ox collapses at noon on the second day, just drops in its tracks, foam bubbling from its mouth. You cut it free and leave it for the vultures that are already circling. Now you're pulling the wagon yourself with your wife and son. Your daughter rides because she's too weak to walk. The wagon is too heavy. You dump more supplies, food you'll need later, clothes, tools, anything that isn't immediately necessary for survival. Each item thrown away is an admission of defeat. But defeat is better than death. Probably. Hallucinations start in the afternoon. You see lakes that aren't there, cities, trees, your dead ox walking beside you, asking why you left it behind. You know they're not real, but that doesn't make them less vivid. Your mind is cooking along with your body. Your wife collapses. You carry her for a while, but you can't manage her and pull the wagon. Your son, 12 years old, takes more weight. You've never been prouder or more horrified. No child should have to literally pull his family's survival. Night brings relief from the heat, but not from the thirst. You're down to cups of water. Your daughter's lips are cracked and bleeding. Your son moves like an automaton. Your wife is delirious, talking to people who aren't there. Then, like a miracle you don't deserve, you smell water. The Carson River. Still miles away, but the dead oxen were right. Animals can smell water from impossible distances. You can too, now that you're more animal than human. The last 2 miles take forever. You're crawling more than walking. But finally you reach the river. You want to dive in, to drink until you burst. But trail wisdom says that's how you die. You drink slowly, small sips, letting your body remember what water is. You made it across the 40-mile desert. Barely, without oxen, with a broken wagon, with a family more dead than alive. But you made it. 1 in 10 don't. You've beat the odds by becoming something less than human and more than survivor. Day 145, the Sierra Nevada, the final boss. You've recovered by the Carson River for a week, but recovered is relative. You're alive. That's about all you can claim. Your wagon is now a cart. Your oxen are gone. You're pulling your possessions like the Mormon handcart pioneers you pitied 2 months ago. Karma has a sense of humor. The Sierra Nevada mountains loom ahead like a final exam you haven't studied for. They're beautiful in the way a tiger is beautiful, best appreciated from a distance. Up close, they're just another thing trying to kill you. The trail up is impossible. Not difficult. Impossible. Grade so steep that intact wagons have to be disassembled and carried up in pieces. Cliffs so narrow that one wrong step means a 1,000-foot fall. And it's October. Snow is coming. You can smell it in the air. You're not alone in this final push. The trail is crowded with desperate pioneers, all racing winter. Everyone helps everyone, because the alternative is everyone dies. Men who haven't spoken in weeks work together to haul wagons up cliff faces. Women share the last of their food. Children carry what they can. It takes a week to go 20 miles. Every foot of elevation is won through pain. Your hands are raw from rope burns. Your feet are beyond description. You're running on pure determination and the knowledge that stopping means freezing to death. Then the snow starts. Just flurries at first, almost pretty. Then real snow, the kind that sticks, that builds, that kills. You're racing now, abandoning anything that slows you down. The cart goes. You're carrying possessions on your back like refugees, which is what you've always been. The pass is a nightmare of ice and wind. Visibility drops to feet. You're following the person in front of you, hoping they know where they're going. Children are carried because they'll disappear in the drifts. Your wife hasn't spoken in hours, saving energy for walking. Day 156, California, the promised land that isn't you. See it from the final ridge, the Sacramento Valley. Green, warm, alive. You've made it. 2,170 miles, 5 months, everything you owned traded for the privilege of arriving with nothing but your lives. The descent is brutal, but you don't care. You're going to California. You're going to live. Your daughter manages a smile. Your son whoops with joy. Your wife cries, the first tears she's allowed herself in months. Sacramento is disappointing. It's a muddy collection of tents and half-built shacks. The fertile farmland is already claimed. The opportunities require money you don't have. You've traded everything for a chance to start over with less than nothing. But you're alive. Your whole family made it, which makes you luckier than most. The Hendersons lost 3. The Pattersons lost everything. The Millers, nobody talks about what happened to the Millers in the mountains. You find work, manual labor that pays barely enough to eat. Your wife takes in washing. Your children, who walked across a continent, go to school in a tent. It's not the dream you were sold, but it's life. Years later, your daughter will become a teacher. Your son will own a store. Your grandchildren will think the stories about eating leather and drinking alkali water are exaggerations. They'll complain about taking the train to San Francisco because it takes all day. You'll never tell them the whole truth. How you considered abandoning the wagon and dying in the desert. How you almost left your daughter at Fort Bridger with a family that had food. How you ate things that weren't food and did things that weren't human to survive. Instead, you'll tell them about the sunrise over the Rockies, about the buffalo herds, about the kindness of strangers who shared their last flower. You'll make it sound like an adventure because that's what they need to hear. But at night, when the California rain patters on your real roof, you'll remember the graves, the hunger, the moment in the desert when you understood that civilization is 3 meals thick. The price of your new life, measured in suffering per mile. You crossed a continent on foot, you survived cholera, dysentery, starvation, and the 40-mile desert. You pulled your family through hell with your bare hands and pure stubbornness. Would you do it again? Never. But you did it once, and once was enough. The Oregon Trail didn't break you. It revealed what you were made of. Tougher stuff than you ever imagined, and weaker than you ever feared. Welcome to California. You've earned every sunrise for the rest of your life. Even if you still dream about walking, always walking, toward a horizon that never gets closer. The trail ends here. But you'll carry it forever, in your scars, your nightmares, and your absolute certainty that your descendants will never understand what difficult really means. They're lucky. You made sure of that.